the point of this talk is that we've got a whole bunch of stuff happening for Node.js at the moment. There's a whole bunch of module stuff going on at TC39, and all of this stuff is going to affect Node. So all of this stuff is going to be affecting Node.js, and we know from the history of how the whole ESM process went that it's probably a good idea for the Node.js project to collaborate and keep involved in the TC39 process and not ignore it. As a member of the OpenJS Foundation, well, not a member, but as a representative of the OpenJS Foundation at TC39, this is me presenting some of the stuff that's going on. And effectively, when I'm at TC39, I'm representing the Node.js project. So the point is that there should be a communication and a feedback loop from Node.js, and this is very strong feedback loop we've got going here. But hey, I'm trying. Between the project and what's going on at TC39. And so this is going to go through some of that stuff. And I was then also going to specifically call out Sean, because this morning he stated that JSPM shouldn't be used at its last release 6 years ago. And there was actually a release recently, and the project is still very much alive. There is more than one user, and it's not just me. And it's actually a very interesting. It has a very interesting approach to import maps package management now. So if you're interested in that topic, the project's worked out a lot of those problems. And I wish it was just less users, because then I wouldn't have the server bill that I do every month. So yeah, back to the module stuff. There's a whole bunch of things going on, and it's difficult to get a picture. This is from one of the slides that is being presented at the next TC39 meeting next week. And there's a lot of concepts going on, and so I'm just going to like blast through it and just show that it's all pretty straightforward stuff. And Node.js needs to pay attention. So the first one, import attributes just move forward. We've got import attributes, but we use the assert keyword instead of the with keyword. The with keyword just got passed. It's now part of the cache key in the module record. So when you importing JSON, this is how you import JSON with ES modules now. We're going to still be supporting with and assert. So we're going to support both in Node.js, and that's because that's what V8 will do. And this is one of the things where we actually brought it up at TC39 that Node.js wants compat for assert, because we're already shipping that experimentally. So it's an example of a place where like Node.js can say, here's a feature that we want, and we can be part of the argument for maintaining that feature. So we're going to have both with or assert. We'll be using both keys for a while, and you'll be able to then transition entirely to with. So that's it. And yes, exactly. Yeah, and it's part of the registry key now. So these keys are the level of uniqueness of modules. Yeah. Import reflection. This is the proposal that we're trying to transition to stage 3 at the next meeting. And in this proposal, you can import a module and you can get back a source reflection for that module. So currently, all modules in the module system are instance modules. That means they have one execution, they execute once they're fully singular. Source imports are the ability to multiply instantiate a module. So you get a source for it, and then you can create lots of versions of that source. So it's virtualization. Import reflection initially will ship it for WASM modules, but then there will be future proposals which will be able to do it for JavaScript as well. So if you do it for WebAssembly, you get a WebAssembly.module. And what this does is it brings, go back, tooling-friendly imports so that your bundler can easily bundle this. Your security tools can figure out that you're loading WASM, and it's sort of baked into the runtime probably. Compartments can then take this and extend the same principle for JavaScript modules. So you'll be able to instantiate JavaScript modules and probably even have a constructor where you can pass a source text string. This will actually be a new global, so it'll be the module source global in JavaScript. And that'll be the next proposal that we're working on at some point. And it'll effectively be a replacement for vm.sourceText module, which has its own issues. But it'll be a similar kind of model, but fully baked into the language. And then yeah. That is a thing as well, yeah. Right. So there was at TC39 a distinction between compartments and realms that was made, where the specs were split apart, and Shadow Realms was global customization, whereas compartments was purely module level isolation. And so those were separate things. The global separation was separated from the module virtualization. I think that you can do with this. You won't necessarily have the global. So this is like, that's a very good point. It's like, well, hey, we want to be able to customize the global, and we don't want to just use the same global when we do this because our test infrastructure. But then you end up having to combine shadow realms and compartments. And so these are the kind of workflows that we need to kind of figure out. And yeah. Well, a compartment will access what you link with. So compartment isn't actually self-contained in that sense. Shadow realm is the thing that's self-contained, where the boundary is fully serialized. Yeah. Yeah. I'll try and go through these relatively quickly so we can. I know everyone's tired, but these are very good questions, and it's exactly the sort of questions and use cases that we need to be running through with the project. So yeah. Modular expressions. Modular expressions will give you the ability to define modules inline. So you'll be able to define sort of an inline module, and this will be fully static. So it's not like an eval injection of a string, but inside of that module, it's a full module scope. And then you can import that module and use it like any other module. And one of the nice things, and one of the main things it's being built for, is for workers. So you can create a worker, and you can then post the module into the worker, and you get a very nice worker experience. But that still needs to be fleshed out a bit. At the moment, it's just kind of, you kind of post it to the worker, and then somehow you'll pick it up on the other side and do something with it. It would still need to be imported, just like it was imported here in the worker once it's transferred. But there are proposals, things like blank workers, where you create a new worker without any constructor arguments, and then be able to initialize it with this module that you post somehow. No one's working on those interfaces at the moment. That's a big area that we need to figure out, because it directly affects how you're going to handle multi-threaded apps in future. So someone should work on it. And then we'll get module declarations. So module declarations, we're able to actually name the module expressions. So these module expressions where it's let mod equal module, you can have a declaration form. And this actually gives you first-class bundling, because now instead of importing a string, you can actually import the identifier that corresponds to that declaration. The declarations form there in like custom scope. Like it's a sort of a scope that exists outside of the normal lexical environment. And you'll be able to link modules against each other that way. So like, for example, you can have two modules in the same JavaScript file, link them together in that JavaScript file, and run the execution of that module graph in the same module file. So you effectively have a native bundling format for JavaScript. And that seems to be progressing. And then deferred evaluation. So this is something that we had for CommonJS for a very long while. And we all know this is a great optimization to write an application. You want to optimize your execution path, your top-level execution. So you put your require inside the function that's going to need it, so it doesn't contribute to the startup time of the application. So you have all the requires that normally run on startup, you put them inside the functions where they're used. You get lazy loading, you save a whole bunch of file system access, you save a whole bunch of execution and loader logic. We don't have this for ES modules. So the proposal for deferred module evaluation is to have a special defer import. It'll be this weird syntax, defer star as. And you'll get back a module namespace, like a normal namespace, but this will be a lazy namespace. So that namespace will be an object of getters. And as soon as you access one of those bindings, it'll do that lazy initialization process and the top-level execution. It will have already done the file system loading and all the rest. So you don't cut out the whole graph, but you cut out the top-level evaluation part. So you at least save execution time on startup. But at the same time, it's fully part of the static module system, so you kind of get the feature while not becoming too dynamic. And then the assets proposal is the last one, so we're nearly there. It's this whole pattern today, which is kind of a bit of a mess. And it's difficult for bundlers to understand these kind of code patterns. People use very Node.js specific patterns, they use very browser specific patterns, and so you can't just expect everyone to know to just use like new URL, relative path, comma, import metadata URL as the only construct, because it's quite a complicated thing to write. So this was actually a proposal created a long time ago by Sebastian Markovich. And he kind of just posted it and then moved on. But we've kind of been able to reframe it within the context of all these new modules proposals, where it actually represents just like another thing where these are all phases of the loader pipeline. So deferred module evaluation is like just before execution. Source modules are before you instantiate. Asset actually becomes the earliest part of the phase. So it's actually like in a weird way, like become like the most fundamental phase of the resolution algorithm, but you can kind of get some asset which represents the key of that module, and then you can do something with that key. And you can pass it to any function that understands a resource key. So you can treat that thing as like an asset. Yeah. Yeah, so this is the proposal that's the least worked out, and no one's actively working on it, but it seems like it's generally on the roadmap at this point as well. So an interesting one, and it's still unclear how it kind of integrates with a lot of other specifications. Node.js went through a process of putting URL into a lot of things, so it would take URLs instead of paths, URL objects. I expect we do a similar thing with this, where this would be treated as like a peg resource, that where you would put your URL or your path, you can just say this is a resource thing, and it's somehow, then like, does it have a to URL on it? Do you expose that, or is that encapsulated? I don't know. No idea. Yeah, and someone wants to do that domain stuff, and then they're messing around for ages trying to work out the pattern. Yeah. Yeah. Right. Well, you have to do it in just the right way for it to work on the web with import.meta.url. So yeah, there's lots left to do, but these things are kind of coming together, and they're sort of starting to form a roadmap of how modules are going to progress and solve some of the problems that we didn't solve to begin with. But there must be continued engagement between Node.js and TC39, and if anyone's ever interested in these topics, has feedback on these topics, there's going to be a continued engagement process, and we mustn't end up in a situation which we are not like creating solutions for Node, we're just creating promise for Node. We need to make sure that this stuff is working for Node.js interests. And so that's it. Any questions? Happy to answer them. Yes? Right. In some kind of abstract computer programming sense, if I knew anything about theoretical programming, I'd probably throw terms like, abstract terms around, but like, in a sense, a module and a function, have similarities, yeah. Okay, right. So this is not a new function you pass a string to, and you can pass arbitrary source text. And because globals typically have high-level privileged capabilities in JavaScript and the web platform, that's a security violation. And so in this case, how does the same thing not apply to module where I'm passing JS module? Well, JS module is not a string. JS module is an actual module source object, which is more like the result of new function. It's the function that hasn't been called yet. So having a handle to a function is okay. New module instance is more like calling the function in the module analog. Right. Right. Because the module system can become a secure capability system in future. And in browsers, we have CSP. You can say which domains are allowed to provide modules. That's what works today. And perhaps we will get sort of more constrained modular security modules in future models. But at the very least, a security analysis tool, you can put it onto the application. It can tell what things are going to resolve to, know what those sources are statically. And so you can do a static verification of your application because you know everything that's being loaded. Whereas if you have arbitrary strings, the sources of those strings can escape analysis, and then you have a security issue. And so that's the whole injection vector problem. So by relying on the modular system, you get that. And not only that, but you also get like some nice features that you get, like a nice syntax for like mocking your tests or something, right? And mocking, you can load your test module that way and then run it multiple times with different, or your fixture, and you can run it different times with different environments or something like that. So you get this multi-instantiation, which in a sense, the module systems are constrained in having singular instantiation already. So it opens that door in a way that integrates in a first-class way with the module system. Cool.
Okay. I have actually two tiny questions. First one, which one of those are already in stage 3?
So we're actually going to we're aiming for stage 3 on the, so this one just went through recently. So that's already now stage 3. Import reflection next week at TC39. We're going to aim for stage 3 on this one, and then it would be implementation ready. If we don't get stage 3 at this next meeting, we should be able to get it in the July meeting. And then this one is a far way out. Modular expressions are coming down the pipeline, and these things are sort of maybe more 3 to 6 months, 12 months. Yeah, still.
Cool. But besides the assets one, is it confident the current specification? Like, or do you think that there will be any major changes to them?
Everything's up in the air until it goes through committee. Yeah.
Yeah.
So.
Finally, talking about, for example, Node.js and TC39 collaboration should be very tight, which I agree. But what about WinterCG, which is a thing that everybody's talking about, right?
Yeah.
But it's also a way how different runtimes that have very different ideas try to tackle also these things and work together. Do you think it would be better if, for example, TC39 got things to get done in Node through that? Or that doesn't make sense?
So yeah, these things all affect WinterCG. So far as WinterCG is also based on ECMAScript. I think so far as WinterCG is still less of a platform effort. And while Node.js remains a dominant platform, we should think about how these things affect our users.
Yeah, but for example, the module stuff, like you mentioned yourself, it feels like this we require an immense amount of work on Node.js. How do you think it?
Well, so all of these features will, they would be V8 features. So they would just sort of arrive, and then it would be up to us to kind of implement them. And the point is that we should make sure that they're going to work for our users, and for the most part, I think I've been really happy with the way that the process has gone, and we've been able to work through a lot of difficult things. But at the same time, there needs to be some kind of review from the users, and we need to make sure that's taking place.
And when you mean review from the users, is also once we land is experimental for people to actually get feedback.
That's too late, right?
That's too late, yeah. When then?
No.
Yeah, it's.
I think this the next few months and the next year or so, a lot of these things will be fleshed out, and so if people are interested in them or if they have any thoughts on it, now's the time to get involved or share your feedback and yeah. This module declarations one, I mean, we don't even know if it'll go through, but I think, really interesting is like the source, which is moving, and then module expressions is very interesting from like a worker perspective, that you're almost writing like, you're getting close to being able to write a block of code and just sort of shipping it off to another
this is really cool because I don't need a bundler anymore or something that defines the module.
It still needs a bunch of figuring out, but that's it. So, Ben.
So the import with the type JSON, is that planned to be extendable? I foresee a future where people say, oh, well, you're giving me the option to say what type it is. Let me define other types that it should be. Does that make sense?
Right. Yeah.
Has that been considered, that the seriously the second that this is introduced and more people are aware of it, they're going to be like, well, why can't I put TypeScript, right? Or
this is excellent feedback, but unfortunately this is a stage 3 spec, so you're too late to provide feedback on it, and you should have been involved a year ago. I haven't been involved in this discussion too much myself either, but it's a done deal now. All right. Thank you, everyone. And please, I'm always happy to discuss these things. So thanks for all your interest.